Good afternoon. The Senate Transportation Committee will come to order. Could we take the roll, please?
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. We have three bills before us today. The first bill we'd like to hear is Delegate Carr's bill, HB 632. Delegate Carr, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. There is a substitute, Mr. Chairman, and I believe that's been distributed.
We have a motion. Do we have a second on the substitute? We have a motion and a second to get the substitute before us. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The substitute is before us, and Emma, could you pass that out if it has not been passed out so far?
Mr. Chairman, it's online and it's been passed out.
Okay, very good. Delegate Carr, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. HB 632 targets noisy exhaust systems on our residential and business arteries. An overwhelming number of constituents and area residents have contacted me about this issue, including one neighborhood with a petition of over 300 signatures. The exhaust systems are often modified specifically to maximize the noise of the vehicle, and the raucous noise is often paired with erratic and dangerous driving. Residents from diverse neighborhoods complain about the noise they have to endure and how their quality of life is affected. This bill would allow police officers to pull someone over for operating an exhaust system that produces excessive noise. The target will be enforcement on those who intentionally modify their cars and rapidly accelerate to disrupt otherwise peaceful neighborhoods and shopping areas. Several community members from my area, I believe, might be here in the Zoom to attest to the scope of this issue and the need for action. In addition, I can just explain what the substitute does, Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead.
Yes, this substitute narrows the primary offenses that localities can adopt to only ones that relate to exhaust noise without allowing other traffic offenses to become primary offenses. It broadens the locations that prohibit operation of a gutted or cut-out muffler. In addition to state highways, it will also apply to church, school, and shopping mall parking lots. The substitute offers some technical cleanup to the code, and the most recent substitute that you see just embodies changes that are structural.
Would I be correct in assuming that also what is somewhat new here is the fact that we're seeing a whole new kind of behavior around these mufflers, where it isn't just a question of people doing it on the roads. They seem to be pulling into shopping centers, churches, industrial sites, wherever, malls, to go side by side and gun their engines in some form of competition or whatever. So what this bill also does is direct that, because the noise does not stay in that parking lot. It does not stay in that shopping center. It goes out into the community, which largely will be, residential.
That's
and
correct.
It's very disturbing. Would that be accurate?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. And also, I might add that my latest telephone call about this was at 10:45 on Saturday night from neighbors from neighborhood that said, "I've got to do something about this. Is they're drag racing? They're making noise. It's the fact that it's frightening the neighborhoods, it's frightening the elderly folks, and so forth. So they want to do something about it."
Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Carr, when you made your presentation, you said intentionally, how should I say it, intentionally revved up mufflers. Is there language in here that talks about intentional, the intentionality? I'm expecting that these mufflers would be out of the ordinary, not something you would see on a regular car.
If I may, I'll let the council respond to that.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Senator Favola, the language about the intentional mufflers, that would be in 46.2, 1047. That's about the types of mufflers that are illegal to operate. Those are the gutted mufflers, the muffler cutout, the chambered pipes, or straight exhaust. So those are the types of mufflers that would be modified.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Favola.
Follow-up question. Okay, so they're already illegal, what you just described, but then you added, I see chambered pipes or, okay, so you added chambered pipes to that language as well.
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Favola, it also broadens the locations on which it's illegal to operate those devices.
Yes, lines 28 to 31 discuss the location. So, Mr. Chairman,
Senator Favola.
follow-up question. So there are two guardrails here, if you will. One deals with mufflers that would be intentionally changed or designed to make more noise. One, and two, the other guardrail is there is a locational specificity to where these mufflers would be if in fact they were going to.
That's correct.
If in fact it was going to be subject to a primary offense. Would you agree with that?
That's correct.
And would you agree with that, Mr. Chairman, General Counsel, would you agree with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Also in 1051, there could be a primary offense for excessively loud exhaust. That's not of the type that's in good working order for factory equipment. That's in 46.2, 1051.
Okay.
Yes, got that. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Cosgrove.
Excuse me, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate, let me ask you a question. There's several of us up here that have Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and they're not quiet. And to be honest with you, riding a motorcycle, noise is your friend because they're hard to see anyway. So what is your bill going to do to vehicles such as Harleys
That will.
that have a particularly boisterous roar to them?
Again, I would like to refer to the council, please.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the language that relates to having the vehicle exhaust in good working order, we're returning that language to the way that it was statewide prior to 2020. So it would be enforced as it was then in terms of statewide. And then for the local ordinances, again, we're talking about two code sections there. There's the 1051, which is noise specific. That keeps the language the same as it was as it relates to motorcycles and adds motor vehicles. So the enforcement there would be the same. And then in terms of the gutted mufflers that we were talking about with the prior question, that would expand the locations where it would be illegal to operate the Harley if it had been modified in that way. But if it had not been modified, that section wouldn't apply.
Mr. Chairman, further question.
Senator Cosgrove.
So I guess we asked this from council as well. So if I buy a Harley from Harley-Davidson dealer, okay, and it has a exhaust system, is there any decibel level that makes it illegal? Is there any? What is the metric? What is the measurement?
Mr. Chairman, the test for those vehicles would be equipped with an exhaust system of a type installed as standard equipment or comparable to that designed for the vehicle. So if it's in good working order and it's the type of the equipment that's on the factory style of the vehicle, then it would be lawful to operate. There is not a decibel level in the bill.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove, does that
For now, yeah.
deal with the fact that as long as you don't alter it, illegally, as you purchase it from the dealer, you would be okay?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I guess where I'm going with this, if you purchase it from the dealer, they can put a different exhaust system on the factory vehicle and buy it from the dealer. My concern is that there isn't a metric here. And look, don't get me wrong, I think the cars and all that other stuff and the trucks and that are just screaming down the road, and yeah, I get that. But I am concerned that motorcycles, not just Harleys, but others as well, may be negatively impacted by this without some type of metric maybe Mr. Maxey can help
Yeah,
with this.
can we call him?
May I ask Mr. Maxey?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Ron Maxey, Virginia State Police. Senator Cosgrove, the standard for the noise currently it will not change from the current law to what it was before to what it will be if this law passes. It just would change us being able to primarily enforce it or secondarily enforce it.
Mr. Chairman?
I believe we
Sir,
had Senator DeStaff next.
Yeah, I have a question for Maxey before you leave. So.
Is your question, Senator DeStaff, is your question for? I'm happy to defer. Okay, Senator Serval.
Thanks. Colonel Maxey, I think you and I spoke about this issue probably about 6 or 8 months ago, I think, or maybe somebody on your team. Can you tell me exactly how a state trooper driving behind a car can tell whether or not an exhaust system is factory equipment or not, for purposes of deciding whether to stop someone?
No, it would be up to the, Mr. Chairman, Senator Serval, it would have to be up to the law enforcement officer to be able to articulate that violation. Some are very visible, some are not visible whatsoever. So the law enforcement officer would have to be able to articulate why he stopped, what he observed, what sound he observed.
Right.
So it would be an articulation issue.
Further question, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Serval.
I know, I get that. And one of the reasons we changed the law was because it's, I think, impossible to do that. So if you could explain to me sort of how a state trooper could be driving behind a car and know what's original or factory equipment on the thousands of models of vehicles or motorcycles or whatever that are out there in the field.
Right. Well, Mr. Chairman, Senator Serval, some are very easy to identify. We purchase vehicles, we've driven vehicles, we work all day long around these vehicles. Oftentimes we can tell if a vehicle comes with a dual exhaust. That's a very quick way to know if it's been modified. Your typical Ford F-150 pickup truck per se is going to have a single exhaust. If you see one with dual exhaust, automatically you're going to know that that's been put as aftermarket unless it's a special edition. And again, we would have to be able to articulate that a Ford Raptor could have dual exhaust on it. So on a normal standard F-150 pickup truck, visually without any sound, we can tell visually that that's been modified. Sound, we would have to be able to articulate a distance. I can tell you personal experience, we would measure out a distance. If we can say that we can hear a vehicle from half a mile away coming our direction, that is not normal for a typical Honda Accord. We would have to be able to articulate the distance in which we heard it and come into court and actually prove that in order to get the violation or conviction.
Thank you. All right, other questions from the panel? Senator DeStaff.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to direct this at Colonel Maxey. So I collect old cars. I modify old cars. I modify the intake, the exhaust. I've got a 65 Chevy truck with a 454 big block, modified exhaust, modified intake, 725 horse. Under this law, that's now illegal. I have antique motorcycles where I've modified the intake, modified the exhaust. I have some that are straight pipe, BMW 1921. It's a straight pipe exhaust. Did it come out of the factory that way? I have no clue. I do know that that one was in World War I or II. I think that was in World War II, and at the time it was 20-something years old. So I want to know how I'm going to be affected by this, because the way I see it, I've got illegal, and I've got an illegal vehicle. Well, I've got a lot of them. On the other side, where Senator Cosgrove was talking, with a Harley Davidson off the shelf, you can buy a Harley Davidson. You can put a Screaming Eagle intake and a Screaming Eagle exhaust, and that is not factory, but that's part of the mod kit you put on them. And you can get it directly from the manufacturer that way. If you order it directly from Harley Davidson, you can get it modified from Harley Davidson. How are we going to? Is that addressed in here, or is that illegal as well? So if you can hit those three scenarios, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStaff, currently on a current law, and I also have a Harley Davidson motorcycle, and I can appreciate the sound of them. Currently, illegal. This changes nothing as far as when you start putting those modifications on afterwards. And again, you're correct that you can get the aftermarket packages even on your pickup trucks now. You can get the lifts put on them, the dual exhaust. It's currently illegal here. It's just the difference of a secondary enforcement option or a primary enforcement option. And I'll yield to counsel on this to make sure I'm correct there, but nothing changes as far as was that legal currently as to if this bill passes.
So Ron, Senator DeStef has always been illegal. Is that correct?
For a long time.
It doesn't, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't change that argument. It was never legal under the current code. And again, so this does not change that aspect of it, and I'll yield to counsel on that part.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. The standard that we apply is it needs to be comparable to the standard factory equipment, and it needs to be in good working order.
Oh, okay. Senator DeStef, you had another question?
Mr. Chairman, one of the concerns I have here is if you look at the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and even go back to the 1920s, a lot of the old cars, a lot of the old trucks, they were tubbed out. You actually put a bigger engine in, you modified it, you put a lot of money into these. And that's happened all the way up through. Under the old antique car section of the law, you were okay with that. I believe the way this is structured, that may not be okay anymore. And some of these vehicles were modified in 1950, 1960, 1970, and prior. The BMW motorcycle I have, I'm sure it was modified at some point. I mean, it was in World War II and had modifications for guns on the handlebars. I don't have guns on the handlebars, but at the time it was modified for that. It's a World War II relic. And Mr. Chairman, I have the feeling that all of those vehicles are now illegal. And, as a good law-abiding senator, I feel pretty bad that I now own a lot of illegal vehicles. And with the fact that Harley-Davidson, when they sell you a motorcycle, I will tell you it's not just the motorcycle. They make a lot of money on the modifications that they make to that motorcycle, just as when you purchase a...
Mr. Chair.
I'm happy to yield if the young lady has to add to it.
Mr. Chair, I just have a question I think might be able to clarify to the gentleman from Virginia Beach, that if you owned these vehicles before the current law went into effect, did you have any problem? And if not, then I would suggest you probably wouldn't have a problem with the new bill.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may...
Yes, Senator DeStef.
Does that mean that everything I own before this law goes through is grandfathered?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to clarify that there is an exemption for antique vehicles from the exhaust requirements.
And the definition of an antique vehicle is how old?
25 years.
25 years. Does that help you?
The Golf War era vehicles.
From the prior century.
All right.
Again, Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate one last time, whether it's a Harley-Davidson that I'm purchasing, it's not the Harley-Davidson that they're really making money on. It's putting the modified air intake. It's putting the bigger handlebars. It's putting, all of the modifications to that vehicle. You take a standard $20,000 Harley-Davidson and you're now pimping it up a little bit, and you're getting a, $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 Harley-Davidson. And I think if we go forward with something like this, we're kind of cutting off the hands of those individuals who rely on their living doing things like this.
All right. Ron, Maxie, you still there? Did any further comment on Senator DeStef's concern?
Mr. Chairman, I talked to Ms. Buck, and that's correct. I wanted to point out the antique vehicle exemption. And again, if I could just reiterate, the standard of what's legal and what's not illegal, or what's legal, what's not legal, does not change in this. It's can we primarily enforce it or secondarily enforce it? So just for clarification, Mr. Chairman.
And would you say, based on the intelligence that you receive with the state police, that the customs and habits of American drivers have changed markedly in terms of the way these altered vehicles or muffler systems are being used, that the patterns of use have changed in terms of what the intent of the drivers is?
And Mr. Chairman, I would say in the past 2 years, I am amazed at how many complaints we've been getting about loud exhaust, so I would agree with that statement. Yes, sir.
The times they are changing. Other questions from the committee? Is there anyone in the audience who would wish to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition? Do we have anybody in the virtual world who would like to comment either for or against the bill?
If you were in the Zoom room and would like to speak on this bill, please raise your hand now. We have several speakers, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll start with those in support.
Robert Mines, you may unmute and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon. I'm Reverend Robin Mines, and I'm the president of the Swansboro West Civic Association. And that's the general area of Hull Street, Midlothian Turnpike, and 26th Street, East 26th Street, and Bell Boulevard. And basically, with all due respect, I know a few Harley riders, and they don't spend their time riding through our neighborhoods and racing up and down the street making a whole lot of noise. And we don't see a Harley that often in our community. However, we have a lot of old, whatever they do with their cars, racing up and down our streets. Even in traffic, I've seen some horrific things that I cannot believe did not cause an accident. We have families with children. We have veterans in our community with PTSD. Do you know what this does to you in the middle of the night when all this is souped up and raring like that? And then they come into our shopping centers.
Okay, well,
At least probably about 100 of them. Fortunately, the police were able to break up the last incident.
Oh, okay, well, thank you.
I really hope that you will consider, I don't know where you all live, but you need to consider our communities.
Thank you very much.
And we need to stop focusing on Harley Davidsons because I love them as well. But that's not the issue here.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next speaker is Wyatt Rolla. Could you unmute?
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Wyatt Rolla. I'm an attorney with Legal Aid Justice Center. I'm here speaking in opposition to HB 632. We are really concerned that by allowing people to be pulled over on the basis of exhaust systems, this bill is going to provide an opening for the pretextual policing that the General Assembly worked so hard to reduce in 2020. In our local, LAJC's local police accountability campaigns, we regularly hear community members list traffic stop disparities as a priority. And in our Freedom of Information Act requests submitted to local police departments, we've seen that borne out in data that has demonstrated geographic differences in stop frequency that map directly onto neighborhoods' racial composition. Because of that, we weren't surprised at all to see the first 6 months of Community Policing Act data showed that Black drivers were twice as likely as white drivers to be pulled over for minor offenses like equipment violations.
Excuse me, would you agree that of all the pretextual stop concerns, this is the one where the reason you're stopping somebody or dealing with them when they're in a parking lot is that this affects people far and wide, in the neighborhood of the noise? It isn't like a dead sticker or a dead registration on your car, that this impacts people at fairly significant distances from where the noise is taking place. Would you say that's true?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely. We acknowledge that your constituents are telling you this is a problem, and I actually live near Belt Boulevard, where the last speaker just referenced. But we really urge you to explore other tools for addressing this issue. Please do not expand police interactions with Virginians for minor reasons, especially when data suggests it will disproportionately impact Black and Brown Virginians and low-income Virginians who may struggle to afford repairs.
Okay.
The risks are not commensurate with the problem.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker, Latasha Weich. Oh, excuse me, Senator Spruill.
White. Yes.
You want to finish the testimony first, then you want to finish the testimony first?
Yeah.
Excuse me?
Finish that first, then call me back if you don't mind. You can finish them first, then call me back.
Okay. Latasha Weich.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I am speaking on in support of HB 632 as president of the Randolph Neighborhood Association. One of the major complaints that I get as president from the community is the frustration about the amount of disruptive noise from these vehicle exhaust systems. Randolph is a diverse community, but it is home to a large senior population. And these seniors have often expressed distress from the noise, from these systems. It startles them and frightens them, especially late at night and early morning hours. Many of these cars travel through residential neighborhoods, and they have these exhaust systems that negatively affect our quality of life. It's the noise pollution that's the problem. It's no less disruptive than the cars riding through the neighborhood with the booming music coming from the speakers. So I'd like for you all to consider this, and think about us when you're considering passing this. Thank you.
I just want to note before we call the next speaker that Senator Marsden is going over to the House General Laws Committee to present a bill. He's last on the docket and he wants to get his bill presented. So I will be filling in. Clerk, do we have anybody else in the Zoom room speaking in favor of this bill?
Those are all our speakers, Madam Chairman.
I'm a yes on all
Thank you.
three.
Is there anybody in opposition in the Zoom room?
If you are in the Zoom room and would like to speak in opposition to this bill, please raise your hand. There are no speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Do you have any speakers in the?
Madam Chair, you forgetting me?
Oh, questions? Excuse me. I will take questions from our committee. Senator Sproul, and then Senator Boysko.
Madam Chair, did you notice whenever someone trying to kill a bill, they use that race card? Now, I love John Cosgrove and stuff to death, but I don't think they're black. I don't think so. So, everyone who have spoken tonight who want this bill passed, they're black. I can tell. Just about. I think. But the key was this. I don't want to vote your conviction, but just don't let this young man who spoke last, the first thing he was saying with the black and brown community, I get so sick and tired when using my folks to get something killed. This is a good bill. And I'm teasing tan. Thank you.
Okay, well, hold that thought, Senator Sproul. We may be ready for a motion sooner rather than later. Senator Boysko.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Eben was unable to be in the room today, but he wanted me to make sure that I said thank you because he has heard from many of his constituents, from Alexandria to Arlington, who consistently have said over the past couple of years that there's been a problem. I would like to add my voice of thanks to you because I, who have a very, very diverse community as well as he, have constituents who have reached out to me time and time again over the past year and a half. And I live downtown in my town. And I will say that around Memorial Day every year, people who come to Washington, D.C. come for Rolling Thunder on their motorcycles. And we have a place called Jimmy's Old Town Tavern, and we love it when they parade through town. And that's not the problem. What we're talking about is the challenges that our families and community members are facing in the middle of the night, or when they're all getting together at the Lowe's department, home good shopping, and they take over the parking lot with their loud cars. And so I just want to say thank you so much for bringing this bill, and I have a lot of community support for this in my very diverse community, too.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Boysko. Senator Cosgrove.
I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I'm going to support your bill. I just want to make sure that we're covering the areas that are important to a lot of people. This is a problem. Okay, so at the appropriate time, I'll make a motion.
Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak either in favor or in opposition to the bill? And then I will move to another senator. Anybody okay? Go ahead, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I was, I plan to vote for this bill too, although honestly, it's not something that I've heard from a lot of folks in my district about. I think it's great you hear about your folks here in Richmond, and I heard from a delegate who lives out my way. He's a constituent of mine, and he said when this was up, he didn't understand why this was so significant, but he spent a weekend here in Richmond, and with shame on him, he needs to come home. But he spent the weekend here, and right before he voted on it, and that's why he voted for this bill, because of it. So if it ends up creating problems for our folks out west, I'm open to revisiting in the future, but that's my inclination today.
Okay, I will take, okay, a motion has been made.
Second.
Is there a second? Senator DeStef.
No, I didn't say that.
Madam Chair.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are you speaking to the motion?
Madam Chair, speaking to the motion and speaking to this, I understand the intent of the bill. I fully support the intent of the bill. I understand we want peace where we live and peace in our neighborhoods. The concern I have is the unintended consequences. I've read this. I understand it reverts it back to the way it was before, so it's a primary. I'm going to support the bill. I'm just concerned down the road that as we have parades, as we do certain things with antique vehicles, that we're going to run into a problem. I know what it says about antique vehicles being exempt, but I'm telling you that, just like with our tags, you get pulled over, it's, you have to explain, well, you got to run that as SS or HD. So I've been pulled over because they said I was in a stolen car because the number on my license plate, and again, and I had to be very polite and say,
You're not even brown.
with SS.
I understand.
Anyways, but I'm going to support the bill.
The beauty is we meet every year. Okay.
I'm just concerned with the unintended consequences.
The motion is to report, and it's been seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 12, noes 2.
The bill reports.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank
Members
you.
of the committee, thank you very much.
Thank you. Delegate Kilgore, welcome. Let's turn to House Bill 1092.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. House Bill 1092 is a simple bill. It repeals the third enactment of the non-repairable and rebuilt vehicle expiration sunset provisions. And if this is not repealed, then DMV will have to go back to hand checking a lot of this, and it would be a big budget implication over there to about $340,000. And basically, this has been a work group that's been through this bill over the past year, stakeholder studies that DMV conducted. And I do have someone here from DMV that can explain this a little bit better than I can. I think, come on up.
This removes the sunset, I guess. It's a straight repeal. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee.
Good afternoon.
Angela Schneider on behalf of DMV. The administration supports this bill, and this bill will repeal a sunset provision and allow us to maintain current code definitions and processes. We were able to implement streamlined and efficient titling processes after a stakeholder study in 2016 recommended this legislation. Continuing the current process also allows the vehicle owner, which is often an insurance company with actual hands-on experience with the vehicle, to determine whether a vehicle is non-repairable or salvage, rather than having DMV make an administrative determination based on a review of a paper repair estimate. The primary impact of maintaining the current definition or reverting to the old definitions is an economic impact. The concerns of the stakeholders who were opposed to the change back in 2017 were noted that this could have an economic impact, and that was their primary concern. We have studied this multiple times. We do not believe the change in definition has any impact whatsoever on highway safety. Neither, when you change the definitions, whether a vehicle is salvage or non-repairable, it cannot be driven on the roads until it goes through a process of rebuilding and retitling. Branding the vehicle non-repairable has the primary economic impact on rebuilders and purchasers of less expensive vehicles. Branding the vehicle in the other direction has an economic impact on those who are purchasing parts for resale, so the salvage parts dealers. There has been a tremendous increase in the number of salvage certificates issued since these definitions were passed, but only a very modest increase in the number of rebuilt vehicle titles. So again, we don't see a lot more vehicles being rebuilt because there are more that are declared salvage. We don't believe there's any highway safety impact, but it does make those vehicles available for repair for economically vulnerable consumers. We also believe the current definitions are consistent with the recommended definitions in the best practice volume for our trade association, which is the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators.
Thank you. You may want to stand by.
Yes.
There could be questions.
And I would say that Madam Chairwoman, that a lot of industry associations, about all the insurance providers, industry businesses are supportive of the bill. And I only know of one industry one business that is not supportive of the bill. So this has been something that's been worked on. Highway safety is not impacted, as my witness said, and it could help those who are wanting, vehicles are hard to find right now, and getting a rebuilt vehicle may put more people in vehicles than they are now. So there may be others who want to testify. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience who wants to speak in favor of this bill, just come up and indicate so. And then those who want to speak in opposition, you're next on the deck.
Ben Dendy, representing Copart. We favor the bill, and I have Gerald Ferris here with me, who might want to make a couple of comments.
Okay.
With Copart.
Mr. Ferris.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, and also
Welcome.
the committee. As a representative on the behalf of Copart, I just wanted to let everybody know we're located in various parts of the state. We're actually in Danville, Lynchburg area, also Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, as well as in Henrico County, in Charles City, as well as Richmond. I was a member of the salvage study meetings over the past decade, but I want to specifically talk about the stakeholder meetings in 2016, which brought about the current statute, which included a diverse group of stakeholders working together. And our primary goal was to improve the salvage industry as well as consumer safety. House Bill 1092 is good for consumers, important for business, and improves efficiencies within the salvage industry. One particular aspect of House Bill 1092 is the elimination of the damage percentage threshold for declaring a late model vehicle to be salvage or non-repairable. I want to emphasize that the current law in place is working. It eliminated repair estimates, which determined whether a vehicle should be repaired or deemed non-repairable. There was no standard at all for repair estimates. Estimates could be written on new parts, aftermarket parts, used parts, and they were frequently overwritten, especially when it was subjective on labor cost. Original estimates were not an effective way of determining whether vehicles should be repaired or deemed non-repairable. I'll give you an example of that. We would receive these estimates prior to sending them off to DMV, and they would be written in excess of 120%, 150%. Now, if you could tell me how a car can be 125% damaged, could never figure that out. But that's how they were written. And the reason for that is because you would take let's say a 2015, 2014 vehicle, and they would write it against new parts,
right,
which would outprice the vehicle. That's not really a good way to determine whether something's roadworthy or safe, okay, or repairable in that effect. So that's all I really wanted to say today to make my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, if you can be brief, that would be appreciated.
Certainly. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Ralston King with Virginia Auto Dealers Association. We participated in the stakeholder work group. We worked on salvage issues for many years. This process has always been effective and efficient, and we support the bill and the definitions for non-repairable and salvage vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody in opposition to this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rob Bohannon. I'm here on behalf of LKQ Corporation. The company provides aftermarket and salvage auto parts, and they're often used to repair vehicles. have a number of facilities here in the Commonwealth, including Sterling, Chesapeake, Colonial Heights, Dumfries, and Bedford County. We oppose this legislation, and I want to kind of make 2 points as to why I think this is important for the General Assembly to oppose as well. One's related to safety, which I know DMV thinks is not an issue, but their own American Motor Vehicle Administrator Association says that that is a concern. And then also the way this increases the cost of used parts. As I mentioned, what our company does, they purchase salvage and non-repairable vehicles. They strip those cars for the parts, and they sell them. If your car's in an accident, oftentimes a repair shop will use an LKQ part because it's just, if your 2011 Camry is wrecked, they can pull a part from a 2011 Camry, get it there, and then repair the car. And it's often a much more cost-effective solution. Actually, our company has said during the pandemic with supply chain challenges across the globe, they usually have not done a lot of business with auto dealers, but now they do because you can't get those parts from Asia as easily as possible, but you can get them here domestically and for a much cheaper price. When this legislation originally passed in 2017, we raised the concern is what this language would do would essentially eliminate the non-repairable market. Keep in mind that a non-repairable car is one that cannot go back on the road. It's a death certificate for a vehicle. Now, looking at data that DMV supplied the year before this went into, you said when your cars are badly damaged, you're either salvage or non-repairable. Before this change went into effect, that marketplace was relatively even with the number of cars that were deemed salvage and the number that were deemed non-repairable. The fiscal year 2020 data shows that in that marketplace, 96% of the cars are deemed salvage and 4% were deemed non-repairable. And we knew that's exactly what would be happening because now when the insurers are allowed to just determine what's non-repairable, there's no damage threshold. The impetus is to deem the car non-repairable because it fetches more at auction, benefits the auctions obviously, but also benefits the insurer by getting more for the vehicle. I mentioned that this is a safety concern. That comes from the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators themselves. Their salvage and junk vehicle best practice report states that when vehicles are underbranded or unbranded, they are more susceptible for sale by individuals offering them for sale for more than their true value, by individuals who can superficially repair the vehicle and offer them for resale without disclosing prior damage, or by criminals who can use the clean title paperwork to cover stolen vehicles and stolen parts. The report goes on to state that in states where the definition is highly subjective and the threshold is not well defined, which is what we have in Virginia currently, or the determination is left entirely to the owner, which is what we currently do, no junk brand or designation means vehicles that are significantly damaged and should be intended for permanent destruction are sold with ownership documents that allow for repair of the vehicle or the use of paperwork, which increases the opportunity for numerous types of fraud. Again, this is from the National Association that DMV is a part of. So we don't have any specific instances. We're saying, based on what the best practices are, this is what the marketplace creates and the concern that we have out there. And when you have less non-repairable cars in the marketplace, the parts are more expensive because the cars you buy, the salvage cars, are more expensive. So we actually think it's an anti-consumer bill. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Bohannon. Is anybody else wishing to speak in opposition?
Madam Chair,
Yes, is there a question?
I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, would you hold that for one moment? I just want to confirm with the clerk, there's nobody in the virtual world wishing to speak?
There are no speakers at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Suderline.
Well, I was disappointed no one from Scott County got in to tell us about it. But I move to report on House Bill 1092.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion to report, and it has been seconded. All those in favor, well, I'll ask the clerk to open the roll. Please indicate so. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Ayes 10, noes 4.
Thank you.
Your bill reports. Okay, the last item on our agenda, Senate Bill 777. Senator Peake.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. this bill 777 's first time we've heard it. It came about as a result of a tragedy that happened on February 16th, which is why we haven't heard it. And I read about the tragedy and the accident, and then it wasn't until Monday when I was in courts or Judiciary Committee that we found out this was a real issue. These are modified pickup trucks for the most part, and they started down in North Carolina and South Carolina, and like all things bad, they start in the Carolinas and they move up here and start contaminating us in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. And what it is are these pickup trucks, they're reverse jacked so that the front sits up high and the rear is down low. What happens, these people are driving these cars that are reverse jacked and they can't see over the hood and they can't see what is in front of them. And what happened on February 16th in Mecklenburg County is a guy's driving one of these vehicles. He can't even see the lanes of the road. So he's coming up over a hill, crosses over the double yellow line and hits another car head on and kills the young man who was driving the other vehicle. I know Senator Eben has signed on as a co-patron of this. He said there was a similar incident in Northern Virginia. It's just started happening in North Carolina and South Carolina. They just in the last year each state has passed a bill, and what it does is it says if the front's jacked up more than 4 inches above the front bumper, above the rear bumper, it's a primary violation, and the troopers, law enforcement can pull them over. And I'll tell you, Ronnie Campbell had a bill in courts, and it was going to repeal everything that was going to allow, which would have allowed for pretextual stops, the license plate things and all of those
I have
things.
one question.
Yeah. Yes.
And so I think it's an important one.
Yes,
Maybe
ma'am.
General Counsel will have to
Yeah.
answer this. Are there any manufacturers now that may have cars on their lot, which they are selling, which could meet your definition, and you'd have an unsuspecting consumer purchaser?
I do not think so, Madam Chair. And I have, Wayne Huggins, we have two members of the state police who are here. We researched this issue, and that's why they passed it. The bill, as it reads, only applies to modified.
Correct. So but then you also.
I don't think there are any manufacturers who are going to put them up with the front end. Not seeing any on any lots with the front end more than 4 inches above the rear.
Let me ask General Counsel, though. Modified is on line 51, but then it just talks about 4 or more inches greater than the height of the rear bumper. For argument's sake, if it's not modified and there are car vehicles that are manufactured and they're 4 or more inches higher, not modified, they purchased like that, how does this law apply? How does this language apply?
Madam Chair, this language would not apply in that situation. This would just prohibit it if the vehicle has been modified to cause that height difference.
So it actually would have to have been changed to cause that height difference. So the flip, I'm going to continue with my question. For argument's sake, if a consumer purchased a vehicle that was not modified but happened to be 4 or more inches greater than the height of the rear bumper, how would this apply?
Madam Chair, then this bill would not apply.
Okay, so the key word here is modified. It's not the 4 inches necessarily. It has to be modified and the 4 inches.
Modified and 4 inches, I submit, would be the key.
Okay.
In both these situations, and we've had several, and we have several people here to testify. If there are any,
I'm going to ask my colleagues if
Have
there's a
any
question, and then we will turn to our speakers. Senator Cosgrove.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to ask the Senator, I saw one of these for the first time this past weekend, and it scared me to death. So I guess the question I would have, and I'm an engineer, so I'm thinking about these vehicles that are jacked up like this, doing over the speed limit on, say, 64 going to the beach, which is 70 miles an hour, but everybody's doing 80, 85 miles an hour. Would there be an aerodynamic upward pressure onto the body of this vehicle that would increase the chances of accidents or whatever?
Well, I don't. Well, that's an
Engineer
important
type
we'll
question
see,
from
but
Senator Cosgrove.
The bigger issue is they can't see where they're going and what's in front of them.
Mr. Huggins.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Wayne Huggins representing the State Police Association, and I happened to be in Lunenburg County this past Saturday. I saw 4 of these vehicles, 4 of them, and one of them was doing well over the speed limit. And if you haven't seen one, these are colloquially called Carolina squats. That's their nickname, Carolina squats. North Carolina and South Carolina has both already outlawed these vehicles as a result of horrendous crashes resulting in fatalities, similar to what we saw in Mecklenburg County. Imagine, if you would, you come out of your house one morning and the hood of your car is open. Would you get in the car and drive it down the road without closing the hood? That image is exactly what these vehicles look like going down the road. They look like they're getting ready to propel themselves off into space. That I can't imagine why anybody would expose themselves and the motoring public to such danger. These vehicles are truly, truly dangerous to the motoring public and need to be outlawed. We support this bill and hope you will also.
I have one other question. I do agree that they are very dangerous. I think you've made that point. For the car owners or vehicle owners who may have done this to their vehicles, can they unmodify their vehicles? Because essentially we're saying
Oh, yeah.
your
If you can
vehicle's
modify
now
it one way,
illegal.
you can unmodify it. So
I mean, 'cause that would be-
I watch those shows all the
That
time.
would be the big issue. 'Cause
And Madam Chair, Senator Steph had a question. If you have a pickup truck and you load it down carrying firewood or mulch or sand and dirt, that would not apply because the truck has not been modified. So, and that was one of the issues. So what this does, it makes it currently it's not a primary offense. So if a trooper or law enforcement sees one of those, they can't pull them over and do anything about it. This bill would
makes
allow
it-
them to do
it's a
something
primary
about it.
offense.
Primary offense.
Senator Cosgrove?
Wasn't quite done. I guess the one thing I'd say about this, having seen this Carolina squat on 64 this past weekend, it dawned on me that if they were to rear end someone or head-on collision someone, they are not going to be bumper to bumper. Their bumper is going to be to the windshield of the car they hit. And that is going to be a fatal accident almost all the time.
That's what they are.
Is there anybody in opposition to this bill?
Madam Chair, move to report.
Madam Chair.
Excuse me, before we actually take a vote, we have one online speaker. Senator McPike, did you have a question?
Yeah, had the waiting to speak button on for a while.
I apologize, I didn't see you in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, understanding the idea, and I like the idea, I guess the question is, what are the considerations, for instance, kneeling buses? Kneeling buses typically drop 9 inches. You have a crane up the hill that has outriggers that also is designed and is also modified to allow the chassis to differ depending on the outriggers, ladder trucks, heavy rigs, logging rigs. There's like a whole bunch of stuff. I guess this is a question to council. Is there a way to better define, because there are modifications that do occur over time on these vehicles, and by fact that it's running, it's therefore operating on the road. Can you limit this to a gross vehicle weight or less than to get to what the senator is getting to, so we don't sort of scoop in a whole bunch of industrial vehicles?
Madam Chair, first line of this bill under the section, it's limited to any motor vehicle registered as a passenger motor vehicle. So those cranes, whatnot, are not registered as passenger motor vehicles.
Now, I'll ask General Counsel if that language is limiting enough based on Senator McPike's question. It would seem to be, but we will ask you for your.
Madam Chair and Senator McPike, that language at the top would not necessarily apply to this language down here at the bottom. So if that is the intent, we would need a line amendment to say no vehicle registered as a passenger motor vehicle shall be operated. Continue.
I think that would be a very useful amendment if you wanted to make that amendment, Senator McPike.
Yeah, I'd so move.
And I
Consider that a friendly amendment.
Thank you, Senator Peake. Okay, my amendment has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
And Madam Chair, also to Senator McPike, I'll just say the bottom 3 lines say it's not for vehicles designed to be driven off public roads. And then Colonel Maxey may have a better answer to that.
Major Chair,
Welcome.
Madam Chairman.
Welcome.
Major, they keep wanting to promote me to Colonel. I got no problem with that as long as y'all give me the pay as Colonel. I don't want to put up with all the stress though
That's
without
okay.
the pay. Madam Chairman.
We're an equal opportunity employer.
I would just point out, if we are trying to address these vehicles, we've probably seen these. A lot of them can be F-250s, F-350s, 3500s, 2500s. They can be registered higher than a passenger car. So some of these are going to be able to skirt out of that by registering it through DMV at a heavier weight.
Yeah.
Again, when it's modified, Madam Chairman, Senator, if it's modified, it's a modification after the fact from the factory. The trucks, this is typically going to have the differential between the two. If it's under load, it's going to be a modification without a load on there. That's how we're going to have to take this measurement. And I know the type of cranes you're talking about with the ballast and all of that they have. So if the modification is made when it's manufactured to handle the weight that it was, we would have to articulate that, no, this is an aftermarket modification that's not there. But I just wanted to point out the concern that by registering or addressing only a passenger car, you're going to miss a large number of the pickup trucks that register themselves as heavy trucks. My thought. I'll just leave that.
Wait a minute, General Counsel has a suggestion.
Madam Chair, I do wonder if state police might be able to tell us a weight rating that might be appropriate. I know we tend to use 26,000 when we're talking about the commercial motor vehicles.
Sure, Madam Chair. So that would get you into a CDL requirement, the 26,001 pounds or more. A heavy truck would be registered and required to stop at weigh scales at 10,001 pounds, I believe it is. So that may be a starting point, but under current code, if you look inside of the 1063, the current code that we're amending, it already has different heights for various weights up to 15,000 pounds, I believe, in there. So you might want to refer to that. And I apologize. The registered weights is more of a DMV issue on
Maybe referring to that. I'll wait. General Counsel is going to further amend the amendment we made, but
Madam Chair.
Important to think about this. Yes, Senator Sproul.
Then now what he's trying to get at, so what you're trying to get at, so that's still in play, right? What you're trying to do?
Yes, Madam Chair, I think Senator Sproul, yes.
Okay, thank you.
It's still going to get the 4 inches.
Well,
the front jacked up front vehicle.
while General Counsel is amending our amendment, there is a speaker online, and I would like the clerk to let the speaker into the room, please.
Ann Taylor Callum, you may unmute and begin your testimony.
Hi, everyone. So I am speaking in favor of this bill for B.J. Upton's family. B.J. Upton is the young man who Senator Peake was speaking of, who died 2 weeks ago in a horrific crash that I saw the aftermath of with my own eyes. It's not something that I think that you would ever want to see it with your own. I'm going to read a little bit because I want to keep it brief for you all and my sake also.
Thank you.
But I speak for all of them as B.J. Upton's family, saying that we 100% support this bill. He was going up a hill and the other driver was fully across the line. Due to the squat on the vehicle, the head-on collision stopped his truck in its tracks. And when it was all said and done, the other vehicle's transmission was in BJ's front end of his truck and was what pushed him to the back seat. Now I'll let you envision that with your own eyes. We are not saying that this crash 100% happened because of the squat, but we do think that the likelihood of it happening if the truck wasn't squatted would be a lot lower and maybe not with the outcome of leaving a 7-year-old without his father. Yeah. This bill isn't about race. It's not about party. It's not about safety. It's about safety and saving lives. No one is saying not to modify your trucks. I mean, I come from an area, Mecklenburg County, there's modified trucks everywhere. But if you're going to modify them, at least keep them safe and definitely not, where you're driving with looking at the sky. I'm sorry.
We totally agree with you. So you've given us very compelling testimony. Thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the patron a question.
Sure.
Go ahead, Senator Peake. Senator Suderline asked the question.
Thank you. Shouldn't this probably have an emergency clause on it?
Senator Peake.
I was going to see how it went And I would like to add an emergency clause if it looks like everybody's in agreement with this. And so it looks like there is. So I would like to add the emergency clause.
I think we could be amenable to that. And let's see what General Counsel has done to our First Amendment, and then we'll have her craft a second.
Oh, I love the Second Amendment.
Don't get this killed.
Okay, General Counsel, let's see.
Yes, Madam Chair, on line 50, after no, strike vehicle and insert passenger car or pickup or panel truck. This language will make it read, no passenger car or pickup or panel truck shall be operated on the highway, and then the rest of the inserted language.
I think that's excellent. Okay, good. Okay, the amended amendment has been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, so I think we've got this in a tighter position. Now, Senator Peake, do you have additional thoughts?
Yeah, let's add the emergency clause.
Yeah, I'll move that.
Okay, Senator Suderline's moved. And Senator
I second it.
Okay, Senator Sproul has seconded an emergency enactment clause, and that's sort of standard language.
Yes, Madam Chair, after line 55, we would insert two period that an emergency exists and this act is enforced from its passage.
Very good, thank you. And I think Ms. Taylor's comments really helped us get to that point.
And
Okay,
Madam
the
Chair-
bill is before
Madam
us.
Chair, I'd just like to thank, we found out about this Monday afternoon, and staff got right on it, state police got right on it, and Chairman Morrison got this into the committee, so thank everybody.
Yes, this was very good work.
Madam
Okay,
Chair,
I'm going to open.
move to report.
Yeah, the motion has been made and has amended, seconded. Will the clerk open the roll, please? Somebody have Senator Obenshain's?
He didn't leave his property.
He did not, okay.
Ayes 14, no 0.
Reports 14-0.
Madam Chairman, before you adjourn, I'd like to thank General Maxey for okay.
Well, colleagues, you've done yeoman's work. This, as far as I know, this concludes the transportation docket. Thank you to staff. You've been wonderful and diligent. And with no other business coming before the committee shall rise.